I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I wanted to move on to the awkward conversation now about the contract situation, because the narrative has always been that the club are relaxed, the players are professionals, the manager's relaxed. Nobody thinks these contract things are a distraction. I've never bought it, to be honest, David, because I think human nature is what it is. And Mohamed Salah said it was in his own mind. That performance from Trent yesterday, I think people need to understand a couple of things. One, he's a local boy, so he's going to be criticised more because of that. And two, fans will always excuse a lot if they think 100% effort is being put in. If they think a local player particularly is running through a brick wall, if he's having an off day with his range of passing or whatever, people get it. But when you have that languid kind of posture that Trent naturally has, and you put in the contract issue, and you put in that performance yesterday, it's inevitably only going to lead to fans thinking one thing, and that's that his head's not there.
That's it. That's the big problem, because you and I can sit here and we will never really know if the reason that he played so poorly yesterday was the fact that his contract situation and the bids that are going in, they are distracting him. We can't get inside his head and know that, but we only know, or I only know what I was hearing around me in the ground and what the perception is, which is that his head is already in Madrid, you know, for the first time ever. And I know it's been a running theme on social media, but that yesterday was the first time ever around the press box I've heard people shouting and suggesting that Trent his head is not in the game and that he's thinking about Real Madrid. So, like I say, that's the only thing that matters is the perception, because the perception has the ability to turn things a little bit toxic. And for Trent, it's a difficult situation now, because, you know, I think it's admirable that initially he kind of said, well, I don't want to play this out in public, I don't want to talk about it. But I think it's becoming increasingly clear to me that he's been keeping his options open, that he doesn't want to say no to Real Madrid yet, that he doesn't want to tell Liverpool that he's going yet. He doesn't, you know, maybe he's not quite made a decision, but, you know, if that was his aim, to kind of use Real Madrid as leverage in talks with Liverpool, and also to just leave that potential move open to himself if he ever wanted to try it, I think its ability to kind of keep it quiet and keep it in house he just can't do it any longer, because it is becoming public. Real Madrid's bids, we know about those. We know about the fact that he's being splashed on the front page of Marca every other week. It's not being played out behind closed doors. It's absolutely fully public. So I just think the time whereby he can kind of, you know, keep himself to himself about this is gone now. It's over. So, you know, it's a really, really tricky situation whereby I think he basically has to come out and say kind of what he plans to do or address it in some way, because if he plans to perform like that going forward, which I doubt, I hope that was just a one-off and we'll see the best of him in the coming weeks. But if it does happen again, those shouts will start up again. And, they were very loud and prominent during yesterday's game, as I say, for the first time I've experienced since this whole saga began. So, yeah, the perception is hurting him more than anything else, and you've got to do something about that.
So, as you've mentioned, Trent wanting to keep quiet is fine, but when you're dealing with Madrid, the narrative is going to be wrestled away. They're, as you said, all over Marca. They're briefing journalists. Journalists are posting it. Fan accounts are posting it. And one side are doing all their talking publicly. And that then hurts the club. So people look towards Trent and think, we get it, you want to keep it private, but it's not really private anymore. It's out there in the public domain to some extent. I also don't think, Dave, that he was helped by the Mirror story that came out the day before about the £78 million 5-year contract offer from Liverpool for Trent, because I'll be honest with you, when I read that story, I thought, well played the club if this is true, because it very quickly then says to Trent, make your mind up, because that is a more than fair offer. I've been critical of the club for the finances, but if that offer is true, £300,000 a week, I think the club can't do any more. I think genuinely that is a more than fair offer, and it's going to come down to what you want to do now as a player.
Yeah, one thing I would say about that report is I think in the same publication it was reported a couple of weeks ago that Salah's deal was done, and that is definitely not the case. So I would take that one with a pinch of salt, if I'm being honest. Don't want to disrespect anyone, but I'm not entirely sure that that's accurate and spot on, really, to be honest. But as you say, the talks are ongoing now. I'm sure they're going to be getting close, at least, to an idea of what Trent would want and what Liverpool's kind of limit where they will go to. So, I just think a decision needs to be made either way. It's, this can't run on for the remainder of January. He can't really run, and if anyone's thinking about letting it run on beyond that without someone saying something definitive, then it's just going to create a toxic atmosphere, which, I don't think it has affected Liverpool at the moment because, look at the table, look at the Champions League table, look how they're doing. I don't think it has. But as I say, I'd never experienced that before where it turned a little bit toxic against Trent yesterday for the first time. And this could be the start of it now. It's, for every week that we don't have a resolution on this contract situation or some honesty and some clarity from him in terms of what he wants to do because his hand has been forced by Real Madrid's actions, then I think it's going to get worse, really. And, if that starts to affect his performances and we see more of that, there's a strong case for kind of Conor Bradley to come in. There's a strong case for change there because, you can't have that happening. It was just really poor yesterday, to be honest, and a really poor atmosphere around it on the basis of what everybody knows. So, yes, something has to move, really.
So I guess moving away from just the Trent side of it, the 3 contracts, to see Richard Hughes be in the club now 6-7 months, and the club still not have any breakthrough on any of the 3 deals, Virgil, Mohamed Salah, and we know about the Trent situation, but they both come out publicly recently and said, no, nothing. Now, I guess that can be a little bit of semantics, but utterly they both come out and said, no news to report, nothing new. You can understand how people are looking around and thinking, what's going on? Because, everybody, and I certainly agree that it was not a problem of Richard Hughes making. He inherited the problem, but he did come into the club and every report out there, whether it was yourself, myself, journalists all over the place were saying that the first thing in his inbox was sort out the contracts. And it hasn't been done. And people are starting to question the appetite from the club to actually do this. And I think it's a fair concern because to not have any of them done in 6-7 months when we didn't have a particularly busy transfer window, I think people are right to start to ask questions about it because it does seem a little bit drawn out, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, one thing I would say about this is, I don't think any of us, and because football is just this massive lie and a big secret as well a lot of the time, is don't have a really good kind of grasp of how these things tend to play out. Therefore, so I find it kind of hard to say, it should take X amount of time. We tend to not know, when sometimes these things are in the works for a long time and then they come out and we don't really know how long it takes and what they're grappling over and the real concrete details about them. And so, I don't want to speak from an area where I've not got kind of expertise on it and to kind of, say it should be wrapped up by now. Because I'll be honest, I don't really know. And as someone who worked in football and worked for clubs and, it's very kind of smoke and mirrors the whole game, really. So it's kind of hard to say whether he should have it wrapped up or not. But I think, one thing, the longer it rumbles on, the more it's creating an atmosphere, not just around Trent, but just general dissatisfaction. And as I say, that's even now pouring into kind of match-going support, who generally is kind of, it's a bit more low-key about these kind of off-field issues, doesn't really get brought up massively. But we are starting to see it now. So at the very least, I'm starting to wonder if, is it time for us to see a bit more of Richard Hughes, to maybe hear from him about what's going on and what's taking so long, to as much as he can give us any kind of insight, or it just feels like something has to give because we're in January now, and that for me was kind of I didn't feel like it was a cut off in terms of panic because I thought that the 3 players were all going to go to other clubs and start talking to them. Obviously Trent was the obvious risk with that, but I don't think that's the case with Salah and Van Dijk. But we're just getting very close to the kind of end of the season where all 3 would go, and you're just starting to wonder what is going on there. Is this going to fix itself? So, I personally, my view now is we're kind of getting to the point where I wouldn't mind hearing from the sporting director about what's going on, how close we are, whether, I just think honesty is the best policy sometimes in these situations, rather than keeping it behind closed doors, allowing either the players' representatives to set the agenda or, in the case of Trent, rival clubs to do that. I just think this policy of silence isn't really working because that vacuum is being filled by other parties who don't have Liverpool's best interests at heart. And you just wonder, is it time for Liverpool to actually say something either on or off the record?
Either that or some firm deadlines of when these things need to be, best offers need to go in or whatever, because I get everybody wants to be treated respectfully and well, but ultimately somebody has to have a hard nose at these negotiations, and everybody in them is coming from a selfish perspective. The agents want the most for the players, the club want the best for the club, and we all hope we get the common ground in the middle at some point. And as you said, these things tend to work out last minute. In a transfer window, how often do we see transfers go right to the last day of the window? So, yeah, let's wait and see on that one, David. But I hope, as you said, that they do start to trickle out a bit more information now, because fans are getting a little bit restless at the idea of not only the contract situation, but of course the season being destabilised by this, because it promises so much at the minute.